Hi, I'm Sonia Nicholson and I am an LPN. I have been for 22, 23, 24, 25 years, something like that. I am finishing my ICP 210 major project. I will be doing a lesson plan today on mechanical lifts, sling selection, and actually lifting someone safely from bed to a sitting position. So I don't have the students in here yet, but what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what we are going to do and what kind of the lesson plan is for the day. And then one student has already volunteered to be our resident, so we're going to have them in bed. I'm going to actually have another instructor just be my partner, and we will together lift Emily, who's going to be the student, and show them the correct sling placement, and also go into kind of cleaning up and preparing a safe environment and transferring them physically to a wheelchair. So I hope you like my lesson plan. I hope maybe you'll walk away with learning something about a mechanical lift. I've very much enjoyed ICP, and I am very glad that it's coming to an end. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, you guys. Today in PN 1006, we're going to do resident lifts. We're going to slip into the lab after here, and we're going to do an actual demonstration of a mechanical lift. Yesterday we did the sit to stand. Today we're doing the mechanical lift. We're going to talk about sling selection, understanding your lift or knowing your lift and equipment, preparing the environment for a safe transfer, and then lifting your resident. So lifting and lowering your resident into what we need that's imperative is the correct sling. So I've got two different slings here to show you guys. Okay, so this sling is what we call a universal sling. And with this sling, it has the different loops and the different colors. And with each color comes a different size. Okay, so understanding if the sling is too large or too small for the resident. So if it is too large, the resident can actually slip out of the sling. So we have to have the right selection of slings for the right size of resident. Okay, so with this one, let me show you the back of it. It has the yellow strip down the center that we can line up perfectly with their spine. Then it has what we call like little handles that we can help facilitate and move the resident without actually pulling on the resident themselves. We don't want to pull on any joints or any skin or arms, anything like that. We're going to actually use this to help move our residents. And then we have the two leg straps, and again they have the loops as well. So how this works in terms of sizing, just want to keep it off the floor. So how it works is the yellow is the first loop, then gray, then blue. What it is the yellow actually will keep you closer to the machine. So if we have someone that's small and short, we want them like cradled, cooped in this little sling. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that the yellow is the first hook that's in, and their body will actually be the closest to the front of the arm of the lift. For a taller person, again, gray, and for a taller, longer resident, we would go with the blue. Okay, so I want to get them from a lying position to a sitting position, so from bed to a chair, bed to a commode, or bed to a toilet. And so I want them in that sitting position, whereas yesterday they needed to have upper strength for the sit to stand, they needed to have leg strength, and they needed to be cognitively well to be able to follow direction. Whereas today, they're going to be cradled in this little sling. Okay, so I just want to show you, so we're on the Know Your Lift. So this is what we call a mechanical lift, a Medi-Man. And so just kind of explaining the lift itself and what it looks like. This is the Sling Bar. So Sling Bar, meaning the sling that I just showed you, these are the hoops that we're actually going to connect the sling to be able to lift our resident from a bed to a sitting position. We go into the battery pack. So this is a battery pack that clicks on the end here. And so all we're gonna do is just kind of click that into place. It has an emergency stop button should we need it. So once we have the battery in, of course it's mechanical, and then we can just test it. So this is the little remote control that's actually going to assist and help us get our resident up and into the chair. So again, the emergency control. This is a spreader bar. So when we actually are under the bed, we want the lift as tight as possible to maneuver around. We're gonna go into preparing the environment because we wanna make sure there's not a lot of cluster around so that we don't hurt ourselves. One of the big things with this mechanical lift, it's a floor lift, so we actually cannot use it with one person. It has to be two people. And there has been a lot of back injuries with this because of twisting and turning. So you have to be very careful and mindful that you are not twisting and turning when you're moving a resident in it. So the remote control, spreader bar, there's the locking wheels. There's actually brakes on, which is just at the bottom here. You can see where it just says on and off down at the very bottom. Then the spreader bars itself. What else can I tell you? This is the hydraulic lift. The motor is the bottom here, the base of the legs. And so with the spreader bar, that is what is going to open the base. So when we don't have a resident in and we're going under the bed, we want to keep those legs tight. And then when we get the resident up, we actually use the spreader bar to open up the legs to do a much more stable lift when we are transferring the resident from a bed to a chair. Okay, so again, this is the floor-based model of the Mediman. Okay, so then there is another type of sling. We call it a hammock sling, and I'm just going to show you the difference here. I'm going to try to hold it up. And what happens is, this is for amputations. If we cannot actually use a universal sling that would go under their legs, fearing that they would slip through the sling, we would use what we call a hammock sling, so it would support them. We're not demonstrating this today. In addition to our lesson later on, if you guys want to, I can show you how this works and how it's different from the universal sling, where it supports more, and this actually wraps around the legs, crosses, so we can lift them up safely without them falling and slipping through the lift. Okay, so this is a hammock sling. Okay. Then, so sling. Okay, so we've talked about the different sling selections and understanding your lift. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and show you the lift and the different parts of it. Okay, so that was know your lift. So now we're going to move into step 3, which is prepare environment. So what does that look like? What does that mean? So what we want to do is, one of the first things is make sure that we have our lift together, that we have our lift with us, that we have the battery in, and that it's working. Okay, so the first thing is having the lift and ensure the battery is charged so that you're not in the middle of a lift and fear the battery dies and now you are stuck with somebody up in a lift and unable to lower them. Do you think that this machine would have something in the event that if the battery was to die on us, that we could get the resident out?
Sure. No? Maybe?
So it's the emergency thing. See, and it goes, and it lets them down. Okay, so again, making sure that the battery is safe so that you can lower your resident and not have them stuck and a battery dies and they're actually suspended above the bed.
What happens if it gets stuck?
Very good question. We talked about the emergency control here, this red button. So actually with that, when I push it, the whole machine will stop. So example, if I have a resident slipping or if the machine is starting to tilt or something like that, I can automatically turn it off and everything will stop. But by this hydraulic lift here, you guys, if you can see this little button on the side, what we actually do is we can pull that, and what's gonna happen is it's gonna just, the hydraulic will let go and it'll just slowly lower the resident down. It doesn't go the opposite way. I can't lift them, but I can lower them with it. Okay, so very good question. Okay, so we've checked the battery. We know that it's charged, that it's working. We've tested the lifts, right? So I tested the up and the down, yes, that it all works. So now what I wanna do is I wanna look around the bed. You want to make sure that everything from around the bed is moved and that you have a clear space, and where I'm going is clear. I don't want to have a resident in a sling and now go to move the sling and have an obstacle in my way. So I have to make sure that the lift is good and where we're going. So if we're going to a commode, the commode is ready. If we're going to a commode, toilet, or wheelchair, that they're all ready for us and nothing in between. No shoes on the floor, like this, these tanks and garbages and things like that would all be moved, okay? Then we're gonna ensure that the slings, hooks, and straps are the appropriate size, that we've chosen the right color. Oh, that's one thing I wanted to write down for you guys, is the color selection for the size. You had that question. So I'm just gonna quickly write that down for you guys. So in terms of, we're gonna jump around here for a second. The size, selection. Jeepers. So an extra small is gray. Bless you. A small is red. Medium is yellow, and that's the one that we're going to use with Emily when we go into the lab and demonstrate. Large is green. Then we have extra large. And write down this word, you guys. Keep it with you so that you understand if someone says to get the bariatric sling. And this one actually is blue. Okay, so bariatric is the term. Okay, so now part of that preparing our equipment, right, and preparing that environment is making sure that I have the right sling. Then clear the path for easy pivot free, so I can move freely, and that I can lift the resident safely, that we're gonna fit, like if I have to go into from the bed to the commode or toilet, so I have to go into the restroom, into the washroom, that there's space to move, that there's nothing on any tables or floorings. I don't have any face cloths or anything like that that would stop me from being able to move them in the sling. And trust me, anything like that, carpet to flooring, is something that it gets pretty hard to move and maneuver these devices around. That's why over time they've gone to ceiling lifts and ceiling tracks and things like that, so that we don't have, these only used to be the models that we had, so that we don't use these anymore and save our backs. Remember, we have one back, so we have to be wise when we are doing our mechanical lifts. Okay, so that would be 3, so preparing our environment. And then we're going to move into step 4 in terms of lifting. So I guess it would be lifting and lowering your resident. So I'm just gonna talk about it, and then we're gonna get up and go into the lab. And Emily, thank you for volunteering. We're gonna get you into the lift and lift you up. Okay, so again, this is imperative. So we have to have the right size. I don't want any resident slipping through the sling. So with that, what we want to do is make sure when we go into the room, first of all, make sure our resident is alert, awake. we're going to explain the procedure. We're going to let them know that we're going to get them out of bed, and where we're going, what we're doing. If we're going to get them up to go to breakfast, if we're going to get them up and if we're going to get them up and to the toilet, or sometimes we're putting, there's another sling called a hygiene sling. Sometimes we're getting them up in the hygiene sling, taking them for a quick shower. Whatever the case is, we're going to explain always to our resident what we're doing. We want to make sure that the resident and their body position is correct. We want to make sure that they're in the middle of the bed. I don't want them too far to one side or the other, fear rolling over, that they would fall out or slip out of the side of the bed. So I'm going to first ensure that they are completely safe and in the middle of the bed. I will raise my bed up to a good working condition. Remember, always body mechanics, like I've said already. We have one back, we have to be wise with it. So we want to raise the bed. Then what I'm going to do is when the bed is coming up, I'm going to get my sling. So we've determined that we're going to use, say, a medium sling. I'm going to grab my sling and I'm going to grab the floor lift. So one thing that I have to ensure is when I'm moving the sling, I'm not going to move it here. We'll do that when we step into the lab and do the demo, just down a couple beds down. But what we have to make sure is this, we don't want to hit the resident with. We are actually bringing this over top of them. So we have to make sure that this, it's called a sling bar, that the sling bar actually doesn't hit them. And one thing too is we have to watch our resident, because I can make sure that I don't have it too close to them or that I'm gonna hit them, but if they moved, they're gonna hit it. So you still have to be very mindful of where it is. I'm going to correctly put the sling underneath them. We'll show you correct sling placement, lifting, taking the sling, getting the right, the loops of the sling and the right colors, and I'll explain the colors as well. There's yellow, gray, and blue, and so just like a car, you know, we want to be sitting, that nice sitting up position. So the first sling is the smallest, so the first loop is the smallest, and the blue is the longest. So depending on the size and the shortness of our resident would determine what loop colors that we're going to use on the sling bar. And then again, carefully placing that sling underneath our residents, ensuring that we're not going to do any kind of pulling of the sling or shearing or any friction. We've taught you guys, I'm just going to raise this bed a little bit here. And again, I'm going to do the demonstration, but I just want to kind of show you a little bit here in terms of using the bed. We want to make sure that we're actually going to, I'm just going to back this up a little bit. If you could help me there, that would be okay. Thank you. Okay. I just want to save my back. I'm getting old. Okay. Age is a number, they say. Everyone's quiet. You guys are so quiet. Okay, so with the mattress of the bed, when I have that correct sling position, you'll see how I lay the sling out. Make sure there's nothing hanging and touching the floor. We don't want anything ever to touch the floor. You don't want to put your knee on the floor. You know, if you're putting shoes or slippers or anything on your residence, and you want to make sure that that environment, again, is safe. So what we're going to do is we're going to, when we have the sling laid out, we're actually going to push and use the bed to be our friend, if you will. I don't want to touch the skin. So when we get them to roll over, we have, again, 2 people. So when we get them to roll over, what we're going to do is get the sling selection and push it into the mattress and safely underneath them, so that when they roll over, they're able to straighten out the sling, roll back in the center, and be completely, perfectly aligned in the center of the sling. So be careful watching the skin. Skin is very frail in our elderly and shears very easily, so that is the last thing that any of us want to do, is to harm or have any skin tears from just sliding a sling underneath somebody. Then when we get the sling underneath and we put the mechanical lift on, we have the correct loops it's gonna be time to raise our resident. So we're always gonna talk to the resident, always be mindful. You know, it's a scary thing. Just picture yourself if you don't quite understand maybe what's going on, and all of a sudden somebody is putting stuff underneath you and you're moving and all of a sudden you're being lifted up. It can be a very scary time and it can startle residents. So we wanna let them know that, you know, we are getting them up, and, you know, be very careful that we're not gonna frighten them by lifting them out of bed, right? Unexpected. Nobody likes surprises like that. So then what we're gonna do is when we get the sling underneath them, we start to lift them up. You're just gonna clear them about 2 inches from the bed, and just to make sure. So when we start to lift them up, you're gonna see, I'm gonna have Michelle help. And what you're gonna see is us, we're going to be straightening out the sling, making sure that the sling is, you know, down past the coccyx so that it's like a little seat, that they are cushioned. I'll show you 2 different ways of putting the sling, the correct way and the not correct way, just so that you see that the potential of how they can slip through, or what we call slip through the lift. The sling straps are confined to the bar, so we want to make sure that we have hooked them up correctly. The patient won't slide out or tilt forward or backwards, that we're going to be watching the resident as we are lifting them up and moving their legs off to the side of the bed before we then move the machine again without that kind of twisting motion. We're going to back our machine up. We're going to turn all with our machine and go straight to wherever we're going to place them. Today it will be in a wheelchair. Okay. I think that's all I can tell you verbally without actually going in and physically doing the demonstration of getting, again, Emily has volunteered, of getting Emily up. Any questions?
How do you know what size a sling is?
Very good question. Okay, so in determining the size of the sling, like I was saying, that they have the color codes. So actually, there's several sizes of slings. So there's an extra small sling, which is a gray color. There is a small sling, so this would be gray. Then there is a small, which is red. So again, this fluorescent, or whatever you will, striped down the center is red. A medium is the yellow, so this would be a medium universal sling. Then the large is green. Then we have a bariatric sling, and it is a blue color. So that's how you're going to determine the size of the slings to use.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, let's go into the lab. Talk about the different slings that you guys are going to use. So does anyone know what this sling is called?
The U sling?
The U sling?
Yeah.
Which is short
It's
for
kind of, but it stands for a universal sling. Okay, so with this, it kind of has different markings. Do you think they mean anything? Do you think this yellow, blue, and gray? Okay, what do you guys think this means?
The spine is in the middle.
Okay,
Line that up with the
so we can line this up with the spine. It's kind of a perfect center to the sling. What are the loops for?
the shortest.
So closest to the sling. So if I've got this on somebody, okay, and it's coming around.
You'd be sitting up on yellow.
So the yellow is the first one. If that's hooked in, I'm the closest to the machine as I can be. So I'm gonna be sitting up the tightest to the machine, correct? And then a taller, more average height would go to our gray, and our tall ladies and gentlemen would go to the longer, so they have a little bit more room with their arms, and that they aren't sitting right up against the top of the machine, which is, yeah, Michelle's pointing here. Their face will be almost right on the arm of the machine. Okay, so Now we have the straps on the top, and we also have straps on the bottom. So same thing, right? If we have the yellow strap, it's gonna be, the knee's gonna be closest, so like a sitting position. Same with taller, and then a really tall gentlemen and ladies, we're gonna go on the furthest, so their knees aren't up around their ears, okay? Why do we cross? So when I have this on, and I'm going to cross it underneath them, why do you think?
The bottom doesn't come through.
And your legs don't widen.
So your legs don't widen, why don't I want my legs to widen? What could happen? Pardon?
So that you will not slide.
Uncomfortable. And it's
Partially, not slide, but
like
there's
privacy
another
reasons.
privacy, but there's another bigger reason. So you talked about the separation of the knees.
It's uncomfortable for the patient.
It's like bad for your hips, the joint movement.
So there you go. So dislocation, right? So we're gonna cross it, and we're gonna show you both. We're only gonna raise her off the bed and down when we have it not crossed to show the difference of what can happen. But leaving her with the safety over the bed, we'll just clear her from the bed, and then we'll cross it, and we're gonna get her up and put her in the chair, okay? So one of the big things that I always found with slings and mechanical lifts is the workers are always talking, and you almost forget about your patient, okay? So this is one of the times that co-works get together. So a floor lift, you have to have 2 staff. Always as students, you would never operate this machine without either an instructor present or another staff member present. 2 students, it's the blind leading the blind, okay? There have been deaths reported over the years with people, not just students, with healthcare workers, and accidents happening in mechanical lifts and residents falling out of them, okay? So you're never gonna use a floor model, so this is a floor lift by yourself. Saying that, always remember that this person is the reason why you're here, okay? Always talk to them, always watch them, okay? They can hit their head on this, even if they're cognitive. So this sling, they don't necessarily have to be cognitively well to understand and follow directions. Whereas when we taught you about the Medi-Man or the sit to stand lift, they have to be cognitive, and they have to have upper torso strength, they have to be able to follow directions, and they have to have leg strength, okay? So with this, they're gonna be scooped in this little net. So I have to make sure that they're in the net properly. But if I'm too busy talking to my partner, they could fall out. So I wanna show 2 ways as well. So we're gonna lift her up, just clearing the bed, and this is gonna be a little bit too high. And I'm gonna show you what the bum looks like, because that's one of the first indications that they're gonna, what we call fall through the sling. They can actually fall through, and their hands will go up and their knees will go out, and they will be hooked into this, okay? And then we'll show you proper placement of the sling, because that is the critical vital spot. Okay, so first of all, we're always gonna want to raise the bed to working height. We're going up, Emily. And then we'll show you proper placement of the sling. Got a short one over there.
I'm used to working with tall people.
Okay, so what I like to do with this is I try to control as much of it as I can. So by putting everything on the bed, I'm not gonna be stepping on it and tripping on it, okay? So straightening it out. Okay, so I have my partner, so what we're gonna do, Emily, is I'm gonna get you to roll over to Michelle. So you can take this leg, bend it, and then you're gonna go roll over to your side.
So roll over, don't shift your bum.
Yeah,
Okay, so otherwise you'll be out of the alignment.
you'll be slipping.
And the resident that needs this would never be able to do that.
Yeah, so when you guys are practicing, okay, when, Emily, did you guys see what she did? So when she rolled over, she shifted her bum. And so what happens when we line her up, if she shifts her bum, she'll come off the placement of this, okay? So what do we have to be very careful and always be mindful when we're doing slings and this type of action? And I don't want to push into them, into their skin. I want to push into the bed. So when I'm pushing here, I'm going underneath her. You want to roll the resident the less times as possible. One roll is adequate. If I had to change the bed, I would do everything at this point. Clothing, brief, wash the back, dry the back, do everything I can, everything that I can, roll it all under, one roll. Then she'll come over, Michelle will pull everything out, and then do the same on the other side. So I just wanna make sure this is all, because if I'm not tucked in here, Michelle won't be able to pull it out on the other side. Okay, so it's lined up with her spine. Okay, Emily, you can roll back over, and again, bend this leg, and then come over my direction. Excellent, so we're just gonna get you to roll right in the center there. Okay, so then you guys can do a quick visual here. We're just gonna do it nice and slow, where you can see she's completely in the center of the sling. Yeah? Okay, so then what I do is you can lay these across right now, so that we're in sync with one another. And then this, we're gonna go under the legs. And you wanna make sure there's no creases, bends into the sling. Okay? So we'll show you first of all lifting up without crossing them and what that looks like. Excuse me. We might. Yeah. And there it is. Thank you. So remember with this, and this is one of the prime reasons we don't use these solo, is because of the back and the twisting. So you always want to maintain good body mechanics. Okay, do you remember what I taught you about breaks?
Just one.
So just one, what does that mean?
The bed.
Either the bed or
Either the bed or the lift, but we're not gonna lock both, correct? So what I always do is I like to lock the bed, because this is one thing that will go flying, and this I can move, okay? So be mindful when you're pushing this in, that you're not gonna conk them in the face. And I have to go up, plus my partner is also watching, that I don't hit the resident. So I don't have brakes on, and I have brakes on the bed. So first of all, we're gonna have her sitting in the chair. So what I'm gonna do first is the yellow and yellow. Okay, then we're gonna go the center one. We're gonna go the gray and gray. And then we can do blue and blue. And then if they're not crossed, okay? Always know where you're taking your resident and have it ready. For safety, we're just gonna lift her off the bed so you guys can see the hip, but we're always gonna have the wheelchair ready. And so what I'm just gonna do is just sit it here, okay? Okay, so now I have the up and down remote. So Emily, on the count of 3, we're just gonna start to go up, okay?
Yep.
We're gonna get you over in your wheelchair. So Michelle is supporting the back of her head. And so as she starts to go up, I start to feel and make sure that this sling is proper. I'm double checking, triple checking the loops. And she's starting to go up. Can you automatically see what's happening to her hips right now? Okay, does that seem comfortable? No, and we could easily dislocate the hip this way. Okay, so we're just gonna, yeah.
Go completely flat, bend your hips, bend your knees.
This is natural. Yeah, okay, but see how she kind of slid a little bit? So,
And if you, can you spin her?
It's like reefing on her leg.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
look at, so for you guys, you can see how it comes
so you
up.
guys come around here because
to
I
the
want you
waist
to
ridge.
actually see this. So come around and you'll see her whole bum. Nope, back this way. Yeah.
Good, so now this is up and digging into the back of her waist, instead of supporting the meat of her butt. So it's gotta kinda grab
So
the
it's gotta
cheeks
be
to
down
safe.
lower in order for her to be safe. So watch your feet again, watch your knee. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, Emily, we're gonna just lower you back down to the bed. Okay, again, supporting her head and neck. Okay, so then now what we're gonna do is just unhook the legs.
Just slide it back down under her butt. Knee bridge. Your patient wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna take 2 slings, yeah? And it has the very first strap here. You cross it like an X. Okay, so now it's gonna mimic, and then we hang it back up. So it's got that cross. So now it's imperative when we start to go up that myself and Michelle are mindful that there's nothing crossed. Oops, pardon me. We're going up here, Emily. Nothing is crossed. And pinching are gonna do any kind of shearing. Okay, so I'm just gonna stop here for a minute. Now, have a look at her bottom, where she is in it more, and her hips not, her knees have not spread out, so that any kind of dislocation can happen, okay? So, in terms of the universal sling, you can, at this point, put slippers on or shoes on. Should we do that? We probably should do that.
These are not shoes that would touch the floor, because otherwise I wouldn't touch the bottom.
Yes.
I
Have
can
your,
get the shoe on.
yeah, my shoes are tight. Yeah. Carlos, that's-
We had this.
oh,
Whoa, almost. Yeah, no. Okay.
yeah, no.
So
You
we
would
would have nice slippers that we would be able to put on. Okay, so remember now, you're gonna come here.
Yep.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start sliding her. Michelle's gonna help guide. And then I'm gonna open up these feet, remember, to help stabilize the lift. And sometimes you're in some pretty tight spaces, okay? And so again, now Michelle's got a break, and I don't have a break on here. So one or the other, right? So we're pulling her back. Now, Emily, we're gonna go down and we're gonna get you sitting in the chair, okay? So again, just guiding. Okay, always watching that we're not gonna bang forehead. Okay, then I like to get this away and back her up. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is just make sure underneath here that everything is flat, and then you just can tie any of the loops up so it's not touching the ground, and straighten any of this up. We go in the back, again take the straps, and you can tie them up. And then making sure that she's sitting in the wheelchair. Emily, how do you feel in the wheelchair? Do you feel your back touching?
Yep.
Yeah.
My butt's touching.
Your butt's touching?
Yep.
Okay, and then that would be it. Brakes off, and away she be. Okay? Yay!
Nice.
Thank you. What else can we show them that we have them?
Did you run the sit to stand?
I do have a question.
Yes.
I didn't see how you managed to tilt the wheelchair and hold it in place for her to sit in.
Oh, just use her.
Yes,
Yeah.
I saw it,
So
yes.
these here you just use, and you just pull that in and into your body, and then she tilts the wheelchair with her body.
So the
That's
weight,
how you know she's back.
holds it back. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, so
so
you're
this
not
is what you're
with
standing
arms.
straight,
Yes.
and you're holding onto these as part, so you were not holding onto her
Yes.
and grabbing her hips or anything. You're actually using the sling
Yes.
to help assist you, just holding her in place, and gravity and body weight will help slide her down.
And the other thing is in a big Broda chair, I can't do that because the top of the Broda chair comes to about here and it's about this wide.
And it's too tall on you.
So then you position yourself at the front with your hands at the hips of the sling. So not push on her.
Yes.
Again,
But
push on the sling.
Remember, your sling is crossed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're holding on to the crosses as you can gently
Yes.
help push into the back.
And you can tilt the Broda chair back
Yeah.
in order to facilitate that nice corner groove.
Does
Yeah,
that
it
mean
has
like a
hydraulics.
mechanical chair with the?
So a Broda
Joystick?
chair is like a Cadillac of chairs, of wheelchairs. So
Okay.
it's a bigger wheelchair that
Yeah.
actually can fully recline
Okay.
and sit straight up.
And does it have a joystick?
It does, no, it's not. It's not an electric.
It's hydraulic.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it has like tilt and recline. So what it is for residents that want to lay down after lunch and not necessarily have mechanical lifts that are up and down and hurts their body. So then they get a Broda where I can physically take the chair, recline it like a bed, flat, and adjust them in it, and they can sleep. And then come mealtime, we can sit them back up, and it's changed their whole position and the weight and pressure points and everything on their body.
Biggest thing with lifts for that, so this is recline. This is tilt.
Tilt, your bum
So
goes
it
in.
takes the bum
It
and the
sinks
back
your bum in.
as one. So if you think of the way she was in the air, you want a Broda in a full tilt, no recline. If you recline it and put them in, then when you sit them up, you shear them. So you want to tilt it, no recline to put them in.
Okay.
So you're putting them into that already comfortable position, is what it is.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
And you'll put the brakes on the Broda chair. So with all schools and with all education, even when we were nurses, there's so many different systems when you get to different facilities. So you can learn one style. Every facility should have a floor lift. If something was to happen with power and everything else, they're not gonna have the batteries. So this is like their follow-up plan. So there's always the floor lifts, okay? So with that, you always, again, need two, remember? I forget where I was going with this. And,
Also in the hallways, if someone falls outside of range of a ceiling lift, or the
Mhm.
dining room,
that you can't get a lift into, right? Yeah, no, I lost
You
where I
were
was going
saying
with that.
you were saying no matter what type of schooling, even when you were.
Oh,
nurses.
so thank you. Yeah, so no matter what facility and lift you have and ceiling track and all that, instructors, that's what we do in those first days that we get to the facilities, is that we actually find an empty room and we take you in and we run through these lifts because we don't have ceiling track lifts. So don't worry, when you get there, we will go through, that's our job, to help you be successful, to help you feel that you understand the ceiling track lifts in those first coming days when you're in there. And again, even the ceiling track lifts as a student, you cannot operate them without an instructor with you, one-on-one, or a staff member. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. That is it.
I felt really comfortable in that lift when you had me up there. Like.
Excellent. Okay, so just in wrapping our video, I just wanted to thank you, Emily, very much for being our resident for the day. And I just wanted to ask you, how did you feel in the sling when we placed you in and lifted you up?
I felt very comfortable. I didn't feel like my butt was gonna fall out or anything. I felt safe and stable, and I knew people that were doing the right thing were looking after me.
Excellent.
Yeah, I learned a lot of things, how to properly be positioned in a sling, what it knows to feel like to be properly positioned for future reference.
Okay, so when you say that now, that just kind of triggers my thinking. So when the sling was up higher on your back, you actually felt like you were slipping through, correct?
Yeah, and I did have pressure on my coccyx in the back, and it was a little bit sore after a while too. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
so very good. Okay, I thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I love being in video.
I think I'm done. Oh my God, give me a hug. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I will see you tomorrow.
You will. With coffee, I'll ask you what you want.
Awesome.